Most people think men are hard to understand, but the truth is, a lot of men are starving for the same thing in silence, and they almost never say it out loud. Not because they don't feel deeply, not because they don't care, but because many men are taught very early that if they talk too much about what they need, they look weak, needy, or difficult. So instead of explaining what their heart is asking for, they go quiet. They pull back. They act distant. And from the outside, it can look like they've stopped caring, when really they've stopped feeling safe enough to stay open. And that's where so many relationships get misunderstood, because what men crave most in a relationship isn't usually what people assume. It's not just attraction, not just loyalty, not just someone to text all day or sit next to at dinner. Underneath all of that, what many men crave is far more emotional, far more human, and far more vulnerable than they've been taught to admit. If you've ever looked at a man you love and thought, why does he feel so far away even when he's right here? This matters. Because one of the biggest reasons men emotionally shut down is not that they have no needs, it's that their deepest needs are often overlooked until the distance becomes impossible to ignore. The first thing many men crave in a relationship is emotional safety without humiliation. That one goes deeper than people realize. A lot of men can handle pressure. They can handle stress, long hours, setbacks, rejection, and carrying responsibility. What breaks them in relationships is not always conflict itself. It's feeling like their vulnerability will be used against them. It's feeling like the moment they open up, they'll be judged, mocked, corrected, or made to feel smaller for having emotions in the first place. So what do? They start editing themselves. They talk, but only halfway. They tell you they're tired, but not what's really weighing on them. They say it's fine because explaining feels risky. They avoid certain conversations because they already know how it's going to go. Not always because their partner is cruel, but because somewhere along the way, they learned that honesty comes with consequences. Maybe he opens up once about feeling like he's failing, and instead of feeling understood, the conversation turns into advice, criticism, or a reminder of what he should be doing better. Maybe he admits something hurt him, and suddenly he's the bad guy for even bringing it up. Maybe he tries to explain why he withdrew, and before he finishes his sentence, he's already defending himself. That kind of thing changes a person. Because when a man feels like he has to stay emotionally armored just to stay respected, he may still remain in the relationship physically, but emotionally, part of him begins to disappear. And no, this doesn't mean women should walk on eggshells around men. It means what all human beings need. A relationship where honesty doesn't feel like danger. A place where being real doesn't cost you your dignity. A place where your softer emotions are not treated as flaws. That's why the men who seem the most calm on the outside are sometimes carrying the most on the inside. And what they crave isn't perfection. It's the feeling that they can put the armor down and still be loved. And what comes next might be the thing most people completely miss. A lot of men crave peace more than performance. Not boredom, not emotional emptiness. Peace. Real peace. The kind where home doesn't feel like another battlefield. The kind where he doesn't have to constantly decode tone, anticipate tension, or prepare for the next emotional explosion. The kind where love feels grounding instead of draining. This gets misunderstood all the time because when men say they want peace, some people hear, he wants silence, or he wants to avoid accountability, or he just doesn't want to deal with feelings. But that's not what healthy peace means. Healthy peace means the relationship is not constantly turning into a place of stress, criticism, chaos, or emotional unpredictability. A man can be deeply in love and still become exhausted if every conversation feels loaded, if every mistake becomes a character trial, if every hard day becomes another reason he's failing someone. Over time, even good men start to shut down in chaotic dynamics, not because they don't care, but because they don't know how to stay open in a place that never feels emotionally calm. So think about how often this happens in real life. He comes home already tired from the world, hoping the relationship feels like somewhere he can breathe. But instead, he walks into tension, sharp energy, unresolved resentment, tiny comments with bigger meanings underneath them. He starts bracing himself before he even opens the door. That changes how a man loves. Because when peace disappears, connection usually disappears right behind it. And the painful part is that many couples don't notice this shift at first. They think they're just going through a rough patch. They think the distance is temporary. But if a relationship becomes a place where one person always feels emotionally on edge, eventually they stop bringing their full self into it. They stop being warm, stop being playful, stop being expressive. Not because that part of them died, but because that part of them no longer feels safe to come out. And that leads to the third thing many men crave more than they can know how to say. They want to feel appreciated for who they are, not only for what they provide. This one is huge, because a lot of men grow up feeling like their value is tied to their usefulness, what they earn, what they solve, how strong they stay, how much they handle, how little they complain. They learn that love often gets louder when they're performing well and quieter when they're struggling. So even inside relationships, many men silently carry the fear that if they stop performing, they stop mattering. And that's why appreciation hits so deeply. Not fake praise, not forced compliments, real appreciation. The kind that says, "I see your effort. I see how hard you try. I see the pressure you carry. I see the love behind what you do." Because for a lot of men, being truly seen in that way is rare. And when it's missing, they feel it. Maybe he keeps showing up, keeps helping, keeps trying, keeps handling practical things no one even notices anymore. And outwardly, he seems fine, but inwardly, something starts to ache. Not because he needs applause every day, but because no one wants to feel invisible in the place where they're giving their heart. Sometimes people only notice what a man isn't doing. He forgot this. He didn't say that. He should have done more here. He could have handled that better. And yes, accountability matters, but if correction becomes the main language of the relationship, while appreciation disappears, eventually he starts to associate love with inadequacy. That feeling is heavier than most people realize, because once someone feels like they can never quite get it right with you, they stop feeling close to you. They may still stay, still function, still play their role, but a quiet emotional distance begins to grow. And if you've ever seen that happen, you know how subtle it is. It doesn't always look like a breakup. Sometimes it just looks like a man becoming less alive in the relationship. Now here's the part that goes even deeper. Under all of this, many men crave one thing that ties everything together. They want to feel chosen, not managed. That difference changes everything. Nobody wants to feel like a project. Nobody wants to feel like they're constantly being evaluated, reshaped, compared, corrected, or subtly told, "You'd be easier to love if you were just a little more like this." And yet a lot of men live with that feeling without ever putting it into words. He can feel when he's being loved, and he can feel when he's being managed. Being chosen feels like, "I know you're human, I know you're imperfect, but I'm with you, not above you." Being managed feels like, "You're always one mistake away from disappointing me." One creates intimacy, the other creates quiet resentment. And this doesn't mean men don't need growth. Of course they do. Everyone does. Love should challenge us sometimes. But there is a difference between growing with someone and constantly feeling like you are being handled, monitored, or emotionally parented. A lot of men won't say this directly. They'll just become more distant, less expressive, less affectionate, less eager to share what's on their mind. Because when someone feels more judged than chosen, their heart stops moving toward the relationship the way it once did. And that's the moment many people misunderstand. They think he changed, but often what actually happened is that he stopped being received. And to be fair, this goes both ways. Women need this too. Everyone does. To feel chosen in their humanity, to feel that love is not a constant audition, But for many men especially, this craving runs deep because so much of their life already feels like performance. So when even love starts to feel like another place where they have to prove their worth, something inside them gets tired. That's why what men crave most is rarely about ego. It's about emotional rest, respect, safety, appreciation, peace, the freedom to be real without hiding the most human parts of yourself. And maybe that explains more relationships than people realize. Maybe the reason some men become distant is not because they've lost all feeling, but because they no longer know how to stay emotionally open in a connection that doesn't feel safe, peaceful, or deeply accepting. Maybe the reason some men look detached is because they've spent too long feeling unseen except for what they do. Maybe what they've been craving all along is not more pressure to perform love perfectly, but more space to experience love honestly.